Welcome back. Today, we're going to be making a potting mix so I can pot up this beautiful new olive tree into a more permanent home. Now, potting mix is an interesting subject because you can just go buy some at the store. It's pretty expensive, or you can make your own from any number of different things as long as you follow some pretty basic principles. So I'm going to teach you about what some of the ingredients you can use and what some of those principles are so you can make your own potting mix at home for quite a bit less money and give you the desired result that you're looking for. Let me start by reminding you that this is an outdoor mix that we're making. So for an indoor mix, you're going to want something a little lighter than what we're doing here today. Your outdoor mix is going to need organic material, and I have a couple things here that I like to use. One is a composted chicken manure and then a garden soil mixture. There's a ton of good stuff in here. So there is bat guano, worm castings, kelp meal. I usually take this and I sift it to get some of the larger particulate out and get left with all that other really dense, nutrient-rich stuff. In addition to the garden soil, I like to use chicken manure every once in a while. It is a rich organic material with a decent amount of nitrogen that'll help your plants get a good start and grow pretty quick. These organic ingredients are really great, but you can't pot directly into them. You need to do a couple things first. And one of the biggest things is you need to add drainage. And for that, there's a couple different things we can use. And one of those things, perlite. Perlite is essentially volcanic popcorn. It is volcanic glass that has been heated to an exceptionally high temperature that makes it pop like popcorn, and you end up with this really porous material that is extremely lightweight and excellent for potting mixes. Water and oxygen flow through the perlite so the roots can breathe and the soil doesn't get waterlogged. This also stops the organic materials from becoming too compacted. Another thing I like to use for drainage is sand, and sand is really good because it's a coarse material. It does allow water to flow through it, but it is quite a bit heavier than perlite, so you need to keep that in mind, especially if you're doing this in a pot that you're going to be moving around a bunch. Perlite is probably a better option, although today I think I might use a little bit of both. The last main ingredient in your mix is going to be fertilizer, and there are a ton of options out there. But for the sake of simplicity, just look for something that's an organic, slow-release fertilizer with a relatively well-balanced NPK ratio. I'm not a scientist, I don't know what works the best. I'm sure it changes depending on which plant you're planting, but you'll be safe with anything like this. Got our ingredients, let's make our mix. Part of why I like this mix so much is it's so readily available. I can just go to any department store, grab this, but if you want to avoid the sifting, you can get bagged compost. This mix is intended to last me 1 to 2 years. If you're looking to pot your plant for longer, I would highly consider going with a soilless mix, using something like peat moss or coco coir. That way you prevent too much compaction over the long term, limit the breakdown, and keep the oxygen flowing to those roots. Sand's easy to get, no big deal. Get it at your local department store. I just so happen to have a good amount laying around from my horseshoe pits. I got a big old bag of perlite. It just so happens to be the biggest one I could find. I got it at Home Depot. And finally, fertilizers. I'm gonna use the end of this bag, open up a fresh one, and that'll complete the mix. Got all our ingredients, got our garden fork. Let's mix it up. You can see how much mix we've got here. So many plants can be potted with this, and bigger pots, and you just end up doing it way more economically. Got everything mixed up, and it is a little perlitey. I think I want a little more organic material in there. Not a bad idea to get some garden soil. It's got some life in there. Don't use too much because you don't want a heavy mix. I just wanted to reduce the ratio of perlite to organic material in the mix and get it right. You'll see I'm using a shovel now. Sometimes that works a little better to mix it all up. And just like that, we got our potting mix. So let's go ahead and give that olive tree a new home. Using a clay pot this time, put a little wire down at the bottom to make sure all the soil doesn't just fall right out. All right, let's get this thing out. There we go. You always want to inspect right at the base to make sure that you don't have any girdling roots. And that is a root that is going to go around and strangle the trunk. You don't want anything that's coming up too far either. And you just want to spread all this stuff out. Ooh, looks like we have a little bit of scale on there as well. That's no good. We'll get that off. Scale's no good. They feed on your plants, and just go ahead and get rid of it. I used alcohol and a toothbrush. Let's cut this guy because it's out of the pot. Cutting the roots might seem a little crazy to some of you, but it's a pretty normal practice. Roots tend to circle the pot at the bottom, so you want to break those up and cut any that are heading their way back up. All right, that's actually looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and see how deep we need this. Oh yeah, we got to put a little more soil in there. Let's do it. Try to get your soil level right. You want the root flare of your tree, the part at the bottom where the trunk starts to spread out, you want that to be about 1 inch below the top of your pot. That way, after you water and the plant settles over time, it'll probably be about 2 inches below the top of your pot, and that gives you room for mulch. And that's important because when you water this, you don't want all the water to just run off the sides. We're in a good spot here, looks about right. Don't be afraid to put a little pressure on it and press it in, see where it might settle out a little bit. Get a shovel or something long and do a little test to see how far below it is. Check and see where we're at here. See if we have enough room for mulch. Yeah. That looks pretty good. Let's move it in place and water it in. We got our olive tree potted up in its fresh new potting mix, that nutrient dense, well draining soil that we created just for pots. And now you can go home, make your own potting mix for cheaper than you can find at the store, get better ingredients for it, and make sure that all your plants thrive. I'm gonna be doing plenty more projects like this in the future, so check back another time, and I'll see you then.